Good evening, Plaza. It sure is good to be able to study with you tonight. As you're watching this, I'll have already traveled to Polly's Island and have gathered with family, Madison's family, so that we can do Thanksgiving. I know that tonight that there are a lot of people that have family in their home. So maybe even tonight as you do Bible study, it's not just you, but you've got a few extra people there, and that's an awesome blessing. I hope you're enjoying time with family this evening, and I think it's awesome that you've carved out time to do this study also. You know, Sunday we didn't talk about Thanksgiving. I just preached through Mark and neglected to do it and forgot that, if I didn't talk about it next Sunday, this Sunday, we will have already had Thanksgiving. But I wanted to take the time tonight to talk about Thanksgiving a little bit. Tomorrow is that day. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. There's so much that we need to be thankful for, but Thanksgiving isn't a thing that is saved only for that day. If you let Thanksgiving happen then, and then you forget your thankfulness by the time that Black Friday rolls around, then you will have missed the point of Thanksgiving, right? I mean, Thanksgiving isn't something we celebrate, but it's a posture we have as we live our lives. That's what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about one psalm in particular. It's a psalm of Thanksgiving, and it's different than any other psalm, any other passage that I know of in the Bible. I think it's beautiful. And you'll notice as we read this passage, it kind of has a beat, a pattern. If we were together reading it, then I would read a line and let the congregation repeat the next part, because originally the way that this psalm would have been read would have been that way. It's antiphonal, which means the speaker would say the first part, and then the congregation would have repeated the next part over and over and over again. And when this happens, the passage kind of has a beat, a da-dum, a da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. And it makes the passage kind of alive, breathing as you read it. I think it's beautiful. Look at Psalm chapter 136 and listen to this psalm of thanksgiving. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the God of gods, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his mercy endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, for his mercy endures forever. To him who has wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endures forever. To him who laid out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endures forever. To him who made the great lights, for his mercy endures forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endures forever. The moon and the stars to rule by night, for his mercy endures forever. To him who struck Egypt in their firstborn, for his mercy endures forever, and brought out Israel from among them, for his mercy endures forever. With a strong hand and with an outstretched arm, for his mercy endures forever. To him who divided the Red Sea in two, for his mercy endures forever, and made Israel pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endures forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea, for his mercy endures forever. To him who led his people through the wilderness, for his mercy endures forever. To him who struck down great kings, for his mercy endures forever, and slew famous kings, for his mercy endures forever. Sihon, the king of the Amorites, for his mercy endures forever. And Og, king of Bashan, for his mercy endures forever. And gave their land as a heritage, for his mercy endures forever. A heritage to Israel, his servant, for his mercy endures forever. Who remembers us in our lowly state, for his mercy endures forever. And rescued us from our enemies, for his mercy endures forever. Who gives food to all flesh, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his mercy endures forever. I love this passage. I think it's so beautiful, the way that it repeats and the way that it does. I wish that I had you here, because it kind of is a mini sermon all on its own. This passage by itself. You could just read it and let that be the sermon, because it pretty much teaches itself. These final two Psalms, Psalm 135 and then 136, kind of go together. They go hand in hand. I'll let you in your own free time go read. But look at Psalm 135 and compare it to 136. There are a lot of overlapping themes. A lot of verses that are almost word for word the same. But the main difference is the repeating of this, the Lord's mercy endures forever. It's kind of like this sledgehammer that hammers and hammers and hammers away at you so that you can get the point through our thick skulls, right? Like His mercy endures forever. And I want to make sure that you don't miss it. So we're going to say it after every single point that I make. I think that it's awesome. Here's one thing that I suggest you do because it helps you get a better grasp of the story. Just go through the psalm in your own time. You can even pause this video to do it. Read the lines that don't say, and His mercy endures forever. So read every other line is what basically I'm telling you to do. And then, at least for me, it's easier to see the story that's going on here. At the beginning, in verses 1 and 2 and 3, the passage tells us in 3 lines. It says, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. Give thanks to the God of gods, for His mercy endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, for His mercy endures forever. And basically, it uses 3 different names for God to tell you we're about to say thanks for this. This is a psalm that would have been read at the temple. The priest would have said it, and the congregation would have been there to repeat as they met there and worshiped God. And we actually see it. There are 2 places this would have been read in Scripture, but one place in particular is in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 1. It only gives the beginning of the passage. In 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 3, it says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good." That's all it says. But what's implied in that quote is that the rest of this psalm would have been read there, which means what was happening there is the temple was being dedicated to the Lord there. Solomon had built the temple. And as Solomon built the temple, fire came down from heaven and it engulfed the offering that was made to God. So the fire came down, it engulfed it, and then the Spirit of God went in and dwelled in the temple. I can't imagine what that looked like. I bet it was something cool, right? And immediately the people stopped and they sang this psalm: "The Lord, His mercy endures forever," and we are thankful for it. Quickly, I want to go over these 3 things that we need to be thankful for that are mentioned in this passage. There are 3 main things that it's telling us that we can see the evidence of God's mercy in, and for that we need to be thankful. Because His blessings are seen in His creation. So that's the first point. His blessings are seen in His creation. If you look here in verses 4 through 9, we see that the writer appeals to things that God has made and said, look at this. Look at His handiwork, that He laid out the earth above the waters, that He put the sun and He put the moon and He put the stars in place. And can't you look up to heaven and see that God's mercy endures forever? Can't you be thankful that you can look to creation and know that God is present there? He's making a simple point. You know God is present. You know God cares for you by looking down at everything you see at your feet and by looking up to the sky and seeing everything is created. And in all creation, you can't help but to see the fingerprints of God. You know that song that we sing at VBS? I mean, we teach this to our kids, right? The hippopotamus. Well, in that song it says His fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much He cares. And then it points to that hippo, and you sing about the hippo. But this passage from verse 4 to 9 is kind of saying the same thing. God's fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much He cares. He's good. His mercy endures forever, and I can see that in creation. You know, Christ, in Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 24, I think through 36, Christ points to creation, and He says, look at the birds of the air, that they're cared for, and look to the flowers in the field, how that they are dressed better than even King Solomon was dressed, right? Christ points to creation and says, look at the evidence that God is here and that he cares for you. If he takes care of a sparrow, don't you know he's going to provide for you too? There is peace that we find in knowing God's present because we can see him in his creation. Look at Romans chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. This is the way Paul says it. Romans chapter 1, right at the beginning of the book. What may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, his workmanship, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Paul says, and I'm not exactly sure how this works, but Paul says nobody's without excuse because in creation itself, you can see the evidence of God. You can see his fingerprints everywhere. Look, there isn't a place you can go in the world that you can't see the creation of God and take gratefulness and thankfulness and that he's holding it all together, that he's been there because he created it. Here's a second reason that we need to be thankful at all times. We need to be thankful because his blessings are seen throughout history. In this passage, from verse 10 to verse 22, we see these three stories of Israel. The first is where Israel, start in verse 10, Israel through verse 14, Israel is taken from Egypt and they are delivered through plagues, the killing of the firstborn. They are delivered away from their persecution and are led into the Exodus. Then after that, we see from verse 15 down to verse 17, we hear him talk about parting the Red Sea and going into the wilderness. So that's a second story. Basically, the Exodus story is what the writer points to. Then from verse 18, and he slew famous kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and gave their land as a heritage to Israel as servant. So verse 17 to 22, he points to God allowing Israel to fight these nations that had previously lived in Canaan, and basically he provided from those kings a new homeland for Israel to inhabit. He gave them the promised land. So he delivered them into this place. So he says, look at what God has specifically done for Israel, for his people. Look at what he's done for your nation and the blessings that he's given you. How can you not look at the history of Israel, look at your past and say, oh, I can see in hindsight that God was there and that he was working for that, in that. He's delivered me before and he's going to deliver me again. We can know that our God is present and be thankful when we look in our lives in any hard circumstance, because we know there have been hard circumstances in our lives that God has carried us through before. Not long ago, I had a close friend of mine tell me that they weren't sure if God cared about them and were present with them anymore, or was ever present with them. And it broke my heart because I know these people and I know their faith. And I told them, I said, you've been a Christian longer than I've been alive, and your faith has carried you through harder situations than what you're going through right now. Like, you've gone through the ringer here lately, but you can look in your past and know God's carried you through before, and he can again. When we look at what God has carried us through before, we can be thankful and take confidence in that. And here's the third thing. God's blessings are seen in his gifts today. So in verses 22 through 24, we see it say that he remembered us in our lowly estate. He rescued us from our enemies, and he gives food to all flesh. Basically, he gives blessings, food to all flesh, even today. Even today. Look at the blessings that I have. Look at what's immediately around me. You know, we say in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. God, we are thankful for the bread that you've given us today. This thing that's right here in front of me. We're thankful for it. And we thank him for that. These immediate blessings, these things around us that we can see. When children pray, children have simple prayers and they are beautiful, right? Back there when I go to pray with Isaac and Mason, when I taught their class last year, I loved going in there because I just wanted to hear them pray. Kids, a lot of times, pray for the things that are right in front of them, things that they can see visibly. God, thank you for my mom and my daddy. Thank you for the food. Thank you for our house. Thank you for our church family. Thank you for your blessings today. Like they thank God for things that are right here, right now, things that are in front of them. I think a lot of times, adults, we get so caught up in the struggles of our day-to-day lives that we will be so worried about things in the future that we neglect to pray and be thankful for the things that are right in front of us. Like we see in this verse, he is thankful to God. We praise God. We can see that he's evident because in verse 25, he gives food to all flesh. I'm thankful for right here, right now. I'm thankful for what you've given. So I want you to look at what this psalm has done. We saw in verse 10 in verse 4 through 9, a wide, sweeping thankful. We're thankful for creation. Everything that I have ever experienced in my life, I'm thankful for what you've done for the universe, right? Then we see it get smaller. God, I'm thankful for what you've done in the history of Israel. I'm thankful for what you've done for your people. The thankfulness goes in smaller. And then we see in verse 25, the way he ends the chapter is by bringing it in all the way to, I'm thankful for what you've done for me. What you've done for me today. You see what the psalm has done? It's thank God for everything. From the way big, all the way to how God has blessed us right now. That is super, super neat. And I love this psalm. Okay, I've got 3 activities, and I want you to choose one of them. Give one of these a shot. I don't care which one you do, but we'll count it as homework for this Wednesday night, a way to apply this message this week. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think, if you wrote a song and you recounted memories in your life, kind of like happens here with these 3 different stories in the life of Israel, in which you could see God's steadfast love and mercy was present in your life, what 3 stories could you point to and say, man, God was with me in that, and I am so thankful for it? What would your 3 be, just like the writer records these 3? Second thing, look back over our COVID-19 year, even with its hardships, okay? And I want you to think, how can I see, even in the midst of this hardship, God's mercy on display in my life? And here's a third thing you could do. I want you to look at the things that are around you, just like a child would. And I want you to pray, basically, through the eyes of a child. I know that's going to be hard for you to do because you've got more experience than a child, but I want you to pretend if you were a child and you were just looking at the things that were right here, these things that you are so thankful for. What things in your life could you point to and say, God, I haven't thanked you. I haven't thanked you in so long that you've given me a roof over my head, and I am so thankful for it. I'm so thankful that you've given me my wife, that you've blessed me with her. What is it right before you, with you right now, that you can be thankful for? So those are your 3 things. You choose one of them, and you do it as a family. And that's what we've got for class tonight. I'm thankful for everybody that tuned in, and I can't wait to see you next week. And we will see you, Lord willing, Sunday. See you then. Bye.